أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. We started this journey about talking about that which brings us to the tent of Abu Abdullah is nothing but Abu Abdullah himself. It's the wudda that we have in our heart, the deep love that we have in our heart, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us. And the source of that deep love is nothing but the iman and the amal salih of Abu Abdullah himself. So in fact, it is Abu Abdullah himself who brings us to his tent. We said that our root belief system, the roots of our religion, well, they should yield in some fruits in our 24 hours. And we said that if we want to make sure that our tree of belief really isn't yielding any fruits, perhaps it's infected with termites. It might be hollow from the inside. So we said, well, what can affect this tree at the root level and other levels? It might be these termites. What are these termites? They're waswas, non-divine whispers. We looked at how these affect man. They affect man at three levels. At the level of the action, at the level of the relationships, and at the level of the root belief system. We saw that the innate effect of waswas was to push man to transgress. When it came to action, it pushed him to transgress. When it came to relationships, it pushed man to transgress. And then we also saw that when it came to the root belief systems, it was also pushing for transgression there. How did it do that? Well, first it came about and it separated our three root belief systems. What were the three? It was the belief in the origin, Tawheed, the belief in the destination, Ma'ad, and the in-between, the divine Vilaya, which was supposed to take us and lead us to the right destination, which was what? A return back to the origin, a return back to Allah. Now waswas comes in and starts to deform the root belief systems. How does it do that? Well, first it separates the three. They're seen as independent things. They're not a system anymore. What happens after that once they're separated? Well, it becomes easier to deform their meaning and what they represent. In particular, waswas comes and it separates the guide from guiding. And hence, successfully nullifies the guide in guiding. Okay. We went further and said, well, there's actually unity between the divine wali and the sharia that he is preaching. The things that the divine wali stands for, there's unity between that and the wali himself. Such that if you were to take one away from the other, if you were to take the divine wali away from the sharia, nothing would be left. And if you were to take the sharia away from the divine wali, nothing would be left. So waswas would come and corrupt this understanding. The tree would appear to be normal, while actually the tree will start to become hollow from the insides. We went further. We said, let's talk about something else. Let's talk about something more contemporary. We said, it is impossible for someone to come and say, improbable I should say, for someone to come and say that the divine wali is apolitical. We said, if there is true unity between the divine wali and the sharia that he preaches, and the similar claim can be made for the sharia as well, that the divine wali was the embodiment of. that the Sharia itself is also not apolitical. We went further than that. We opened up Shafa'ah after that and said, well, what is Shafa'ah? We realized that it's not something that pushes for inaction. Rather, it's something that motivates one to act. It pushes for action. And we gave the analogy and the explanation of somebody stuck at the bottom of the well, and now the divine wali is at the top of the well. He's facilitating the person at the bottom to come up. That facilitation, that completion of the attempt of the person at the well below, that's shafa'ah. We said that holding on to the rope of Allah, holding on to the deen of Allah, implementing and acting on the deen of Allah in this dunya is exactly that which allows me to come out of the well and be with my Mawla. It allows me to gain His shafa'ah. It allows me to be in His presence. Okay. What happens then when somebody is actively trying to come out of the well of sin? Well, when he's actively trying to come out of the well of sin, he's in fact helping the Imam. He's taking himself out of the phrase where we say, Allahumma al'anhum jami'a. We explained that concept. That the haqq of the Ahl Bayt that was taken was what? What was their true haqq? We explained that if Yazid and all the people that were with him came to the Ahl Bayt and said, we like you a lot, but continued doing everything that they were doing, that wasn't going to be it. The Ahl Bayt weren't going to leave it at that. The haqq that was taken from them was not one of being liked only. We're not from that madhab where we understand the allegiance given on a certain day by thousands to just be for liking someone. We're not from that madhab. Okay. Simply liking the wali was not sufficient. Rather, the obedience of him was. Obey him in what? What was the purpose of the divine wilaya in our root belief systems? It was to take man to the right destination, which was the return to the origin. So now when one grabs onto the rope of Allah, the deen of Allah, the hand of Allah, and in his 24 hours commits to acting on the Sharia itself, he is in fact assisting the divine wali in doing that which the divine wali wanted. What was the claim of Abu Abdullah when he left for Karbala? He said, I'm leaving for the islah, the pulling out of the well of the ummah, which is me and you, of his Jad, the Holy Prophet of Islam. So we saw that, and we went further than that, and we said that, well, there are certain things that a person, when they start to separate from, by definition, they're going towards another thing. When they separate from below, by definition, they're going above, they're rising. When they separate from those that took the haqq away, now by definition, they are going towards those that can say the salam. Okay? We went further and we said, what are two methods by which the divine wali wanted to guide the masses? We said it was one, the words that he used, and two, it was the traditions and habits that he inculcated in the society itself. We saw examples of how waswas comes and first causes an imbalance in the understanding of the words of the divine wali. We saw how a certain word told to man to guide him to respect women, that exact word, that exact purpose is turned upside down. Waswas comes in, causes an imbalance in understanding, and now the opposite effect starts to take place. The words that are meant to guide women now to uphold the husband as an authority, those words, an imbalance in understanding them, cause the opposite effect. That was one area where transgression takes place. How about the second area? The second area was the habits which the Ahlul Bayt were trying to inculcate in society. What were the habits? We said there are two main habits that no one can deny, that every single Imam tried to inculcate, tried to preach, tried to make firm in the Shias. What were they? First was the Aza of Abu Abdullah, Azadari itself, and the second was the intizar of the zuhoor. Okay. We talked about the first last session, and today we go forward to talk about the second. Before we go forward to talk about the zuhoor and its types, we have to first talk about the ones doing the intizar of this zuhoor. Salawat, please. Intizar's root words are nazara. Nazara, to see, to hold and to focus something. Before we talk about those people who are doing the intizar of the zuhoor, zuhoor being the presence, right? People who want to see, who want to hold focus to the presence, the coming of the Imam, we have to first talk about those people who are going to be doing the intizar. We talked a little bit about the parents. Today we're going to talk about another very critical and important aspect of society. We're going to talk about the kids today. See, in GTA today, the average child, the average kid in a Shia family goes to school how many hours? About 7, let's say. Okay? They also need to sleep as well. Approximately how many hours does a child in GTA today sleep? Let's say about 8 hours. Do the math, take it out of 24. How many hours are they awake in their 24 hours? About 16 hours they're awake. Okay? Of the 16 hours that they're awake, how many hours were they in school? About 7, we said. Okay? That's about 40% of their time they're at school. Okay? Let's go forward. Let's see what's happening at school. The situation in the school is not, in the public schools, is not a very pleasant situation. See, there's a new deen that's coming about in Canada. There's a new religion that Shaitan has brought forth in the West. Okay? For 7 hours, the child is going to school. 40% of the time they're there. Let's see some of the things that are going on. What was a swear word 10 years ago, 15 years ago, What was a slur and swear word back then? If you talk against it, you get sweared at now. Okay? This is the deen of shaitan, and its followers do not take lightly to those who oppose their deen. If you don't conform, at least in the appearance, you're bullied. What's the age group of the people we're talking about here? What's the age group when they start going to school? It's kids who are 6 years old. Okay. Me and you at our workplace have a difficulty standing up to the deen of shaitan, let alone a 6-year-old standing up to his peers. Not just his peers, his teachers. Not just his teachers. The administration, not just them. The mascots and priests of this particular deen too, that are sent into schools to preach the deen itself. If you stand out against the deen, you are bullied. This bullying before used to be something, see, bullying 15 years ago, when you got bullied, at least you had somebody to go to. You could tell the teacher, I'm being bullied. Okay. You could tell your principal, I'm being bullied. In this particular case, the teachers and the administration themselves become the bully if you start to oppose the deen of shaitan. Okay. Situation's not looking too bright. Before we can talk about the intizar and the zuhoor and the faraj, before we can talk about the coming of the Imam, before we can talk about those that are waiting for it, doing the intizar, we have to make sure that there's people left when he comes, that he could lead. We have to make sure that we're not feeding into the opposite side. The situation at the moment is very, very dire. I'm not exaggerating when I'm saying it's the deen of shaitan. Let's look at what else happens. Salawat, please. So we have a child now going through 7 hours of his 16-hour awake time. Which of the 2 landing strips do you think is being developed for 7 hours at a time? Well, what did we say about the landing strips? I didn't mention it in the review because we're going to talk about it now. What happens when you develop the non-divine landing strip? What did it do? It deformed the capacity for the divine one. It allowed for further non-divine cargo to come in. It facilitated the appearance of that. It prevented the appearance of divine help now from reaching the person. But the situation is dire. After spending about 8 years, 40% of which was in this front lines, if you will, the capacity for this child now, when he reaches intellectual maturity, around the age of, let's say, when he's going into now grade 9, grade 10, now when the intellectual faculty is starting to develop, before that can even develop, a virus is already placed inside the system. Okay? The person simply doesn't have the capacity to do intizar. Intizar was what? Nazara, to keep into focus something else. His focus has already been directed towards something else other than the zuhoor itself. Pulling that particular focus towards the zuhoor is nothing short of a miracle now. At best, you'll pull it in the form, the appearance. At best. The situation is quite dire. We understand that. On the other hand, there's also another problem happening. What's the other problem? Well, they're trying to be Islamic schools. They're super expensive. Okay? They're trying to be Islamic schools. They're super expensive. Not only that, there's more problems. You have you have more than 10,000 Shia kids in GTA who are ready to go to school or are going to school right now, from grade 1 to grade 8. If you were to max out the capacities of every single Shia school in GTA, it's still not a solution. Okay? If you were to max out the current capacity of every single trying to be Islamic school in the GTA, it is still not a solution. What else is out there? Homeschooling. Homeschooling is extremely difficult for a family to do by themselves. So now, the GTA Shias are caught between the frying pan and the fire. Neither can be ignored. Simply closing your eyes to the bullying and the assimilation really doesn't take those things away. Very, very recently, this country was colored in orange. Why was it colored in orange? It was taking a stand against something that happened in its history. What was that happened in its history? It's an active attack in their schooling system, the assimilation of the Native American kids in the schooling system. Brothers and sisters, history repeats itself. It doesn't copy itself. The form isn't there. But the actuality sometimes repeats itself. So, trying to be Islamic schools are difficult. They're not a solution. The very few who can afford it, alhamdulillah, not everybody can. Homeschooling, if you can do it yourself, alhamdulillah, not everybody can. Now what happens? What was the sunnah of Allah we've been talking about? We said Allah takes the very thing that the enemy tries to use to put down the deen of Allah. What does he do? He uses that very same thing to bring up the people. Right now, the enemy is trying its very best to put down the Shias, to put down anybody who doesn't believe in the deen of shaitan, which is more than just Shias, by the way. What's the sunnah of Allah? That very pressure serves as a motivation to rise up. What does that mean, to rise up? That very pressure serves as a motivation for a person to elevate himself, to rise, to raise himself. So how do you raise yourself in this particular scenario? Well, you have to facilitate a place for these kids to have an education, period. It simply can't be the public schooling systems. Homeschooling was difficult. As a community now, you find yourself in a position that if you do not go and if you do not actively try to find a solution, you're at a dead end. See, 10 years ago, if somebody was to choose this to talk about on the 9th of Muharram, there'd be a problem. It wasn't a relevant enough issue yet. Brothers and sisters, if the tent of Abu Abdullah is to remain in the years to come with people in it, those people need to be protected. Here's some solutions. I'll offer one solution. I'm explicitly picking grade 1 to grade 8 as my topic of concern today. Why? Because this is the time where a child is, as I mentioned before, a sponge. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made the child such that the parents whose job is to teach the right deen, to teach and inculcate the beliefs of Abu Abdullah himself, Allah has made sure the qabil now, that the person who's supposed to take that has the capacity to take. It's at the prime time to now develop meanings in this child. Meanings like what? Like success. What does success mean? Okay. When these meanings are set at this age, from the time from grade 1 all the way to grade 8, it's very difficult to take these meanings out later on. Okay. So, grade 1 to grade 8. There's 3 main things that are needed. What are the 3 things? You definitely need a location. Not many people can teach at home, and teaching at home does not go well with living at home. So you need a location for sure. Okay, what else do you need? You need the actual stuff. Not everybody's a teacher. Not everybody has the capacity to teach grade 1 to grade 8. What's the third thing that you need? Well, a school isn't just providing my kids with the education, it's also providing them with a social structure. Friends. An outlet that they can take their energy out in. So you need these 3 pillars if you want to have a solution. I will suggest some things in all 3. But this suggestion isn't the all, if all answer. I'm not saying that it's my way or the highway, na'uzubillah. No. I'm saying here's a suggestion from somebody who grew up in Canada. Okay. We have centers in Canada. We have Hussainiyas in Canada that are closed, not occupied the majority of the day. If they're occupied and if they have an event, it's in the evenings or night times. Okay. Most of these places are empty in the daytimes. At least those people who can perhaps approach such locations See if these things can be used, these places can be used. If they can't be used for free, it's okay. Try to see if you can rent them out. If the Husainiya isn't close to you, but enough of you guys are close, try to see if you could rent a location for yourself. I'm talking about a community coming together and making sure that their kids are safe from the deen of shaitan. This is a deen that you yourself cannot talk against at your workplace. So it does not make sense to send my 7-year-old, my 6-year-old in an environment and say, you know what, fend for yourself. I'll see you 7 hours later. Salawat, please. Many attempts at community schooling have been done in the West, in particular in GTA. Some successful, some not so much. Go find out about them. If you have like-minded families, if you truly care about the zuhoor and the intizar of it, if you truly want that action to take place, then step up. Now that we've said some things about the people who inshallah will be doing the intizar of the zuhoor, let's talk about the zuhoor itself. Salawat. See, intizar. The root word for intizar was what? Nazara. What was nazara? To see, to keep into focus. Okay. Keep into focus what? Intizar of the zuhoor. What's zuhoor? The presence. What are the types of now zuhoors? One type we commonly know and we commonly understand is the apparent zuhoor of the Imam for everybody. For me, you, for enemies of Islam. For every single person on earth. The apparent zuhoor of the Imam. Where now you can interact with him, you can talk to him, he can talk to you. Not just you, his enemies can talk to him and he can talk to them as well. That's the zuhoor we commonly know as the common zuhoor. The zuhoor for the common people, the masses. Be they in the tent of Abu Abdullah or outside of it. There's a specific zuhoor as well we'll talk about today. And we started this particular idea before by giving the example of the divine wali being like that first layer of sunlight from the sun. Okay? That first layer of sunlight from the sun. What was the qualities of that first layer of sunlight? What was the difference in the heat of that first layer of sunlight? It was millimeters away from the sun itself and the sun itself. There was no difference in the heat of that sun ray except that it was a ray of the sun. It was entirely dependent on the sun. Okay. When the ray of the sun now reaches any part that it reaches, what must it go through? What must facilitate that particular heat and light? The initial ray must. Talked about that. The initial ray, the initial layer was in fact the presence of the divine wali himself in this analogy, right? So now every single blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from this sun, every single ray that comes out and reaches the earth, it comes only by means and is facilitated by none other than that initial layer of the sun. The divine wali himself. Okay. So now the presence of this divine wali, we talked about the idea that the divine wali is not limited to the physical form, not limited to the 2 hands, the 2 feet, the physical appearance only. The divine wali existed before the existence of Nabi Adam himself, before the existence of the human form. The divine wali transcends that, is beyond that. Okay. Salawat, please. See, every step that a person is taking to come out of the well of sins and go higher towards Allah was facilitated by who? By the divine wali himself. You were holding on to the deen of Allah. What was the deen of Allah? It was nothing but the wilaya of the wali. There was unity between him and the wali. One aspect of the divine wali, an aspect not bound to his form, was the Sharia itself. There was unity between him and the Sharia. He was the embodiment of the Sharia itself, his physical form. Now every blessing and everything that reaches us from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes to me through the divine wali himself. The divine wali is the facilitator of the blessings of Allah. When we go to visit the Imams, what do we say to them? We say, يَسْمَعُونَ كَلَامِي. You hear my speech. وَيُرَدُّونَ salami. You also reply to my salams. See, the Imam is not confined and the Imam is not limited to the physical aspect of himself. That is why me and you today sitting in GTA can say Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah and know that he has heard it. So his presence now is not something that is limited. In fact, it is everywhere. Where is it? Just in the outside world? No. I have certain attributes to myself. I have certain kamalat to myself. I have certain virtues to myself. Each virtue that I have that takes me towards Allah, the presence of the divine wali is there too. He's facilitating that particular growth towards Allah. Each time I'm given a choice to follow the deen of Allah or to leave it behind, and I choose to follow it, that very choice is facilitated by the divine wali. His presence is there as well. The second type of zuhoor is a very special zuhoor. It's not the zuhoor of the apparent form. It's the zuhoor of the actual meaning. Was the apparent form of the Imam in Ghaiba, or were we the one that were not able to see him? It was us who were not able to see him. A similar thing occurs in the actuality of the zuhoor itself. It's me who doesn't recognize that the Imam is in fact facilitating every step of my journey towards Allah. That facilitation existentially exists. It's already there. It's my lack of recognition that's keeping it ghaib, that's keeping it not apparent. Salawat, please. See, we're here tonight to remember the absolute dedication of Imam Hussein towards his goal. What was his goal? His goal was the islah of the ummah of his jad. It was to take the ummah of his jad out of the depths of the well of sin and towards Allah Himself. Tonight, we're here to commemorate and we're here to remember exactly how great the sacrifices the Imam made in trying to achieve this goal. Tonight is the night of allegiance. It's a night of renewing the pledge. It's the night of bay'at. Tonight we remember the efforts and the sacrifices of Aba Abdullah himself in trying to take the ummah of his jad towards Allah. This is the night we gather to see the resolve of the father and the compliance of his infant son. Aba Abdullah gave all he had for Allah. Aba Abdullah gave all he had for the islah of the ummah of his jad. From the morning, Aba Abdullah has been carrying his companions and those he loved, those who loved him, those who held on strongly to him. He's been carrying them back from the battlefield. Now this is a time where Abbas isn't there with him anymore. It's a time now that his son Ali al-Akbar is not there with him anymore. It's a time now that from the Bani Hashim, very few remain. Aba Abdullah has been going from the morning and taking the shuhada from the battlefield and bringing them back to the tent. My ashab Akbar and Abbas, Allah be witness, I've given them all. I give now one who has to be carried, for he can't even crawl. Aba Abdullah takes his infant son towards the army and he tells them, if you see me as an enemy, for sure this infant you can see, he can neither talk nor can he walk. I ask not but a drop for him. He's an infant, can't you see? Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah.
السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Every majlis that you enter is the haram of Abu Abdullah. On Thursday night, the night of the ziyarah of Hussein, on the night of Ashura, let's all become the zuhoor of Hussein together. As-salamu ala al-Hussein wa ala Ali ibn wa ala Hussein, it's the night of Ashura. The night wherein Abu Abdullah said, Wallah, I love to pray and read the Quran. Tonight is a night of ibadah. Tonight is a night of dhikr and worship. Tonight all the ashab of Abu Abdullah are happy, they're discussing, they're laughing, their heads are in sujood. Tonight the ashab of Abu Abdullah have full tranquility, they know tomorrow is the day they'll be able to see Rasulullah with pride. But alas, these ashab, loyal to their word, one by one give their lives for their Mawla Hussein. Today we hear the same call as well. Woe to us if we plug our ears. This same call has been ringing since the day of Ashura. Wallah, the sun of Ashura has not set. Kullu yawmin Ashura. This same call can be heard from the Imam of our time as well. As he looks over towards Furat and he can see the body of his brother Abbas. And when he looks at his feet, lined up are the bodies of Akbar and Qasim. He says, هل من ناصر ينصرنا أما من ضب يضب عنا. Is there any helper to buy their station in paradise by helping the Ahlul Bayt? The haqq of the Ahlul Bayt is that you follow them. One man said, I'll give you my horse. One man said, I'll give you my sword. Hussein says, don't be miserly with your life. When he makes this call, all of a sudden the ladies in the tents let out a scream. فرجع الحسين. Abu Abdullah goes back towards the Mukhayyam. Zainab, what is the scream that I heard from the ladies? They said, Akhi al-Husayn, when you called out your call of loneliness, your 6-month-old threw himself from the cradle. Where are the criers over Fatimiyya? It's as though Asghar wanted to say, Father, if my uncle Muhsin was sacrificed for wilayah, then I too will be a sacrifice for you, Hussein. If my uncle in Medina, do you know where I've gone? If my uncle in Medina came behind the door, then surely I too can be a sacrifice for you. Abu Abdullah says, give my tifl, give my infant to me. Perhaps I'll be able to speak with the enemy. The infamous moment has arrived. When the enemies speak with one another, they say, Hussein has brought the Quran. Wallah, Hussein himself is the Quran. The Quran is for those who can think. What he has brought is for a people who at least have a heart. Here you don't need Iman. Here you don't need Islam. If you can see what the enemies see, Wallah, if my enemy brought me his infant, no matter what a grudge I have against him, his infant is different. He says, oh people, if you see me to be a sinner, what sin has my 6-month-old committed? Abu Abdullah looks out towards the enemies. He says, oh people, you have killed all of my children. Oh people, all my friends you lot have taken. Oh people, will your hearts now not awaken? Oh people, you see my son's desperation. He is thirsty, have some mercy. For the sword he is not worthy. He is thirsty, have some mercy. My infant is in a hurry. Why is he in a hurry, Abu Abdullah? The Maqatil narrate, like a fish out of water, his mouth is opening and closing. What I had said happened. The enemies look at their enemy Hussein, but when they look at his 6-month-old, some of their hearts begin to melt, some of them begin to shed a tear. Omar ibn Sa'd sees this scene. He says, Harmala, la ilaha illallah. The The Mal'un says, O Umar ibn Sa'd, do I strike the father or the son? Umar ibn Sa'd says, do you see the white part under his throat? Allahu Akbar, the Asr of Ashura has arrived. Ya qawm, in lam turhamuni, farhamu hadha ar-radhi. Mothers, you understand. For me, this is a difficult musibah. Bila tashbih. When I saw Syed 7-month-old, 8-month-old, I began to understand what an infant looks like. La ilaha illallah. Mothers, I know you understand. I don't know what that enemy of Allah saw. فرماه هرملا بسهم فذبح الطفل من الأذن إلى الأذن, from one ear to another. If you did not want to give water, even your silence would have killed me. Did you have to respond in this way? Such a big arrow for a baby. You can sleep now, Asghar. I will come to you soon. You can sleep now, Asghar. I will come to you soon. You are my precious star, and you're my brightest moon. Go to sleep, Ali Asghar, Ali Asghar, Ali Asghar. He makes his way back, but then he returns. How can I show this infant to his mother? The blood that pours from his neck, he smears on his beard. I want to say this: when Amir al-Mu'mineen returned from Masjid al-Kufa, and he arrived at the door, and Zainab saw that his beard is dyed in his own blood, she couldn't take it. Abu Abdullah's beard is soaked in the blood of Akbar and the blood of Qasim. When he returns to the tent, he says, Rabab, won't you come together? Let's bury our Asghar. With the sheath of his sword, he digs a small grave. La ilaha illallah. It's the night of Ashura. On the night of Ashura, no musibah can end without the musibah of Hussein. he digs a small grave for his asghar on the Asr of Ashura for 3 days without a shirt on his body, without a head over his body. جسمه بكربلاء ورأسه على القناة. Even if you put the head of my Mawla on a spear, I beg you, don't touch the grave of his 6-month-old. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين. يا حسين